The deadbolt was already turned when I put my key in the lock. I pushed the heavy wooden door open, the hinges groaning quietly in the empty hallway. My brother, Lin Yu, stood right in the middle of my living room. He was adjusting the pristine cuffs of his tailored suit, looking entirely unbothered by the fact that he had just let himself into my home. He held my Silver Culinary Excellence Award in his right hand. Before I could even drop my work bag onto the counter, he raised his arm and hurled the heavy metal plaque directly against the brick wall. The glass frame shattered instantly, sending sharp fragments scattering across my hardwood floor. He stepped right over the broken pieces. His voice was completely flat, entirely devoid of any hesitation or guilt. As he delivered the ultimatum, he was marrying Chen Jing, the heiress to the massive Chen family real estate empire. But there was a problem. He and our mother, Wang Qin, had already told the Chen family that I died in a horrific house fire 10 years ago. They needed me permanently erased to secure his marriage and his access to a $50 million family trust fund. My phone vibrated violently in my coat pocket. A text message from my mother illuminated the screen. It was not an apology. It was a cold, direct order demanding that I leave the city of Taipei for the entire wedding week. The message ended with a very clear threat. If I showed my face anywhere near the Yangmingshan estate, she would personally flood the health department with fabricated sanitation violations to permanently shut down my catering business. I stood frozen in the entryway. I swallowed the thick, suffocating knot forming in my throat and stared at the floor. I looked right past his arrogant, expectant face, my eyes locking onto the tiny, blinking red light of my indoor security camera mounted high on the bookshelf. I am 32 years old, and I have spent my entire adult life building an elite luxury hospitality firm from absolute nothing. I am an executive chef. My daily reality consists of brutal 14-hour shifts standing over blistering commercial stoves, managing a brigade of 20 exhausted line cooks, and scrubbing grease out of my fingernails until my skin is raw. I know the exact cost of $1 because I have traded my own sweat and sleep to earn every single one of them. For years, Wang Qin would visit my modest apartment, pinch her nose, and loudly complain that everything I owned smelled permanently like kitchen grease. She called my career a blue-collar embarrassment. She treated my exhaustion like a character flaw. Yet, every single time her boutique business failed to make rent, or Lin Yu maxed out another luxury credit card trying to impress wealthy friends, they magically forgot about their disgust. That same kitchen grease paid the mortgage on the sprawling suburban home she currently lived in. That same embarrassment kept them entirely afloat. They were not just cruel. They were deeply, fundamentally parasitic. They viewed my existence merely as a resource to be drained and, once depleted, a stain to be scrubbed away. As Lin Yu walked out of my apartment, leaving the shattered glass of my hardest-earned achievement scattered across the floor, the heavy silence of the room pressed down on my shoulders. I dropped to my knees and began picking up the jagged pieces of the frame. The sharp edge of the glass sliced into my thumb. A bright bead of dark red blood welled up, dripping onto the pristine silver of the award. The sharp sting grounded me. The agonizing shock radiating through my chest began to harden, crystallizing into a cold, unbreakable clarity. They wanted to play a high-stakes game of elite social survival. They completely forgot that I survive industrial fires for a living. The very next morning, the harassment escalated. Wang Qin was not satisfied with my silence. She required absolute submission. She left a scathing, breathless voicemail on my phone. Her tone was dripping with artificial panic and toxic entitlement. She demanded that I wire $10,000 directly into Lin Yu's account by 3 o'clock that afternoon. She claimed they desperately needed last-minute wardrobe upgrades to maintain their wealthy facade in front of the Chen family patriarch. Chen Vai. She reiterated her threat, promising to systematically destroy my commercial kitchen's reputation if the money was not deposited. She honestly believed her own delusion. She thought my silence was the silence of a terrified, obedient victim. She had no idea she was actively handing me the exact ammunition I needed to bury them. I deleted the voicemail, sat down at my stainless steel prep counter, and opened my laptop. I did not waste a single second crying over the family. I never truly had. I pulled up my corporate vendor registry. The Chen family's event planners were notorious for using a highly exclusive, strictly vetted list of top-tier vendors for their events. My luxury catering firm was already the primary subcontractor for the premier event agency handling the wedding. I picked up the phone and called the agency director. I bypassed all pleasantries and pulled my seniority, demanding to personally take over the executive catering account for the Chen wedding. I made one strict stipulation: all client-facing invoices, contracts, and service agreements were to be filed exclusively under my parent company's corporate alias. The paperwork would show a faceless elite hospitality group. My actual name would never appear on a single document. Lin Yu and Wang Chen were too busy obsessing over designer seating charts and silk napkins to ever look past the bold corporate logo on the catering contract. They blindly signed the vendor agreements, completely unaware that they had just hired the exact sister they had brutally buried alive. With the contract secured and my all-access vendor credentials printed, I logged into my home security cloud server. I downloaded the crystal clear, high-definition video of Lin Yu breaking into my apartment, smashing my property, and outlining their entire fraudulent scheme. I ripped the audio of Wang Chen's extortion voicemail and spliced it directly to the end of the video file. I loaded the entire digital dossier onto a secure, encrypted flash drive. The trap was perfectly set. It required no magic, no guessing, and no luck. It relied entirely on their own blind. Towering arrogance. The day of the wedding arrived with heavy, suffocating humidity. The sprawling Yangmingshan estate was transformed into a breathtaking fortress of white orchids, imported crystal, and staggering wealth. The sheer excess was dizzying. I stood in the massive, high-tech staging kitchen hidden behind the main ballroom, wearing my crisp, double-breasted executive chef coat. The noise of the prep staff was deafening, but my mind was completely silent. I waited until exactly 1 hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I did not burst into the ballroom screaming. I did not grab a microphone and make a hysterical public spectacle. That is what amateurs do. I walked quietly through the restricted staff corridors until I found the head of the Chen family's private corporate security. I handed him the encrypted flash drive and simply told him that his employer was about to sign a $50 million merger with a family actively engaged in criminal extortion and wire fraud. I told him the proof was indisputable. 10 minutes later, the entire atmosphere of the estate shifted. The music did not stop. The guests in the grand ballroom continued sipping champagne, completely unaware of the absolute devastation unfolding behind closed doors inside the soundproof executive antechamber off the main hall. Chen Wei sat behind a massive mahogany desk. His face was a terrifying mask of absolute frozen rage. His daughter, Chen Jing, stood beside him, her face completely drained of color. Lin Yu and Wang Chen were shoved into the room by two massive security guards. The heavy oak doors clicked shut. I stepped out from the shadows of the corner, crossing my arms over my chef's coat. Wang Chen gasped, her hands flying to her throat as if she were choking on the very air. Lin Yu stumbled backward, his eyes wide, darting frantically around the room looking for an exit that did not exist. Before Wang Qin could even open her mouth to spin a new web of desperate, pathetic lies, Chen Wei hit a button on his desk. The high-fidelity speakers in the room filled with the undeniable sound of Lin Yu smashing my award, followed immediately by Wang Qin's screeching voice demanding $10,000 and threatening my business. The exposure was absolute. There was nowhere to hide. There was no misunderstanding to manipulate. Chen Jing let out a sharp, visceral sound of pure disgust. She ripped the heavy diamond engagement ring off her finger and threw it with blinding force directly at Lin Yu's chest. The ring hit him and bounced onto the thick carpet. Chen Wei leaned forward, his voice terrifyingly calm. He informed them that the wedding was permanently canceled. He stated that his corporate legal team was already filing a comprehensive cease and desist order, and that if either of them ever approached his family or his businesses again, he would ensure the extortion audio was handed directly to the district attorney. He motioned to his security team. They grabbed Lin Yu by the arms. Wang Qin collapsed to her knees on the expensive rug, weeping hysterically, reaching out for a billionaire who looked at her like she was a disease. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I turned on my heel and walked out of the room, my spine straight, leaving them to drown in the exact grave they had dug for me. The silence in my apartment that evening was beautiful. The toxic weight that had hung over my entire existence was completely gone. But a narcissist humiliated is a deeply dangerous animal. The story did not end with their social exile. Late that night, my phone screen illuminated in the dark. It was a high-priority alert from my commercial kitchen's perimeter security system. I opened the live feed. The grainy night vision camera showed Lin Yu pacing frantically near the rear loading dock of my catering facility. He was completely unhinged. He used a heavy steel tire iron to violently pry open the older metal door. He thought he was a genius. He thought he was exacting the ultimate revenge. He dragged a heavy duffel bag into my prep area. He pulled out massive industrial jugs of severe allergens, preparing to pour highly concentrated peanut and shellfish oils directly into the commercial vats of soup I had prepped for a massive charity gala the next day. He wanted to frame me for mass poisoning. He wanted to see me rot in a federal prison. He completely forgot who owned the building. The moment he crossed the threshold of the interior kitchen, my phone pulsed again. I tapped the screen once. The heavy, commercial-grade magnetic smart locks on the walk-in prep area slammed shut with a brutal, echoing thud. The interior lights snapped on, flooding the room with blinding, unforgiving fluorescence. Lin Yu dropped the jugs, whirling around to grab the door handle. It was completely immobilized. He began slamming his fists against the reinforced glass, screaming silently into the camera lens. I dialed the authorities. I did not report a simple break-in. I reported an active intruder attempting to tamper with a registered commercial food supply. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, they did not just hand him a trespassing citation. Tampering with commercial food meant for public consumption is a severe violation of the Federal Anti-Tampering Act. It is a felony. I stood on the sidewalk in the cold night air, watching as the officers dragged him out of my building in heavy steel handcuffs. His tailored suit was ruined. His face was stained with pathetic, terrified tears. He begged the officers. He begged the empty street. He was no longer a high society groom. He was a federal suspect looking at years in a state penitentiary. 2 days later, without the massive influx of Chen family capital, Wang Qin's failing boutique went into total default. The bank seized her inventory. Her sprawling suburban home was foreclosed upon. She was completely, utterly bankrupt, entirely abandoned by the social circles she had worshipped, left alone in a cramped studio apartment with nothing but her own bitter resentment. The heavy, suffocating fog of my past finally lifted. For the first time in my life, I stood in my kitchen and the air felt perfectly clear. The metal counters shined. The rhythmic hum of the refrigerators felt like a heartbeat. The journey through that absolute nightmare fundamentally altered the architecture of my mind. It stripped away every single illusion I held about loyalty, obligación, and the sheer destructive power of unchecked entitlement. When you survive a betrayal executed by the very people who were biologically supposed to protect you, you realize that society sells us a deeply dangerous lie about family. We are conditioned to endure abuse, to shrink our own potential, and to swallow our own pain simply because we share a last name. We are told to keep the peace. But keeping the peace with a narcissist is just a slow, agonizing form of self-destruction through the absolute wreckage of their empire. I forged 3 unbreakable rules that now govern every single aspect of my life. These are not just theories. These are the survival tactics of someone who had to climb out of her own grave. Rule number 1, blood is a biological fact, but it is never a lifelong debt. You do not owe your sanity, your finances, or your dignity to people who treat your very existence as an inconvenience. Society demands that we forgive family unconditionally. But forgiveness without changed behavior is just an invitation for further abuse. The moment you realize that true loyalty is built on mutual respect and consistent actions, you stop letting toxic people use your empathy as a weapon against you. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to lock the door. You are allowed to permanently close the account. Your peace of mind is vastly more important than protecting their fragile illusions of a happy family. Rule number 2, never, ever negotiate with a narcissist's ego. When entitled people feel threatened by your independence, they will always escalate. They will lie. They will extort, and they will try to destroy your reputation, to force you back into submission. The worst mistake you can make is trying to explain your side, trying to argue logic with someone committed to misunderstanding you. When they threaten your livelihood, you do not argue. You stay completely silent. You collect the receipts, you secure the undeniable proof, and you step back. A narcissist's greatest weakness is their own towering arrogance. If you stay quiet long enough, they will always walk themselves entirely into the trap of their own making. Let their own words be the absolute weight that pulls them under. Rule number 3, honest labor is the ultimate impenetrable armor. We live in a world obsessed with empty status, fake wealth, and unearned titles. People like my mother and brother spent their entire lives running from hard work because they were fundamentally terrified of reality. They believed that manipulating their way into the elite class would somehow fill the massive, gaping void in their own character. But titles can be revoked. Trust funds can be frozen. Corporate buyouts can be canceled in a single, devastating signature. The grit you build from the ground up, the resilience you forge standing on your own 2 feet, the actual tangible skills you bleed for those can never be taken away by anyone. My hands might be rough. My clothes might sometimes smell like kitchen grease. But everything I have, everything I am, belongs entirely to me. I built my empire with my own bare hands. And it is a fortress that no amount of toxic entitlement can ever breach. The aftermath of their downfall was not filled with cinematic celebrations. It was filled with profound, quiet peace. I surrounded myself with a chosen family. The sous chefs who stayed late to help me prep, the loyal clients who respected my craft, the friends who never asked me to shrink myself to make them comfortable. That is what true family looks like. It is an environment where you are celebrated for exactly who you are, not manipulated for what you can provide. I sleep soundly every single night. The ghost of the sister they tried to bury is completely gone. In her place stands a woman completely unbothered, fiercely independent, and entirely free. Have you ever had a toxic family member try to hide your light just to protect their own fragile illusions? Have you ever had to cut ties with people who viewed your success as a threat to their control? How did you take your absolute power back? Drop your story in the comments below. Your journey might be the exact blueprint someone else needs to finally walk away. Hit that like button. And do not forget to subscribe to stay with us for more incredible stories of absolute justice. Deep reflection and undeniable empowerment. Thank you for supporting our channel. Remember, your peace is worth protecting, and the truth will always serve the best revenge. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there yelling, why on earth did she wait so long? Why did she ever pay off his debt 5 years ago? Why did she not just block them the very first time her mother complained about her smelling like kitchen grease? Let us talk about the psychology of the trap. It is called the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. When you grow up in a toxic environment, you are not dealing with logical relationships. You are dealing with an addiction to crumbs. Toxic families give you just enough of a fake smile, just enough of a temporary pause in the abuse to keep you pulling the lever. You keep thinking that if you just work a little harder, pay off one more bill, or stay quiet one more time, you will finally hit the jackpot of their genuine love. She was not stupid, and she was not weak. She was systematically conditioned to be their safety net. But here is where she flipped the script. And this is exactly what you need to learn from her financial self-defense. First, building the case. Notice how she handled the extortion demand for the $10,000. She did not call back and scream. She did not try to negotiate with her mother's ego. She let the security camera roll and she saved the voicemail. In the real world, your anger means absolutely nothing to a narcissist. Evidence is currency. Scammers operate in the shadows of unrecorded conversations. Documenting their demands is how you turn the lights on. Second, the audit strategy, toxic people, especially social climbers, hate details. They are obsessed with the image, not the infrastructure. Her brother and mother were so blinded by the shiny $50 million finish line that they did not even bother to audit the catering contract. She used a corporate alias to completely bypass their radar. They wanted a free ride. And she used their own lazy entitlement against them. Always read the fine print and use the fine print to your advantage. Finally, the buyout. She did not burst into the ballroom and grab a microphone to make a scene. She treated her toxic family like a hostile corporate takeover. She handed the encrypted drive directly to private security. She separated her emotional trauma from her strategic execution. She invested her professional leverage to execute a flawless exit, effectively buying her permanent freedom. Here is the final verdict. Your empathy is a beautiful trait, but without boundaries. It is just an open bank vault. You cannot finance someone else's delusion with your own dignity. Blood might make you related, but it absolutely does not obligate you to be collateral damage. If you have ever had to execute your own exit strategy from a toxic situation, get in the comments right now and tell us how you did it. Your survival guide might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Hit subscribe, protect your peace, and always keep your receipts. We will see you in the next one.